So, I'm basically doing my bachelor's on like clichés as a starting point for choreography. And also I'm just interested in what clichés are, the definition, or like what people see as cliche. Because it's a word that we use every day, but it's very different from like person to person. So I'd just like to hear like what your thoughts are on what a cliche is. Elodie?
Well, that's a broad question. I think it very much depends on where you grow up, and when we're speaking about dance, like in which schools you have been and what is your previous knowledge and education, what you have seen, because I think it differs from country to country or from place to place. What are the cliches? For example, if there's a piece from Israel to Holland, it might be something completely new to us, and for them it might be a cliche. So it can be, of course, the dance world, it's like global, but I think it has a lot to do with what is your previous experience, because a cliche, it's also something that in a way you hear often or you see often, and therefore it becomes something cliche, no? This is just like the general thing about the cliche I'm thinking of. But let me think a bit more about like specific things in dance.
Nice.
For me, I think it's like I can agree that it's really individual, and it's sometimes something that like either I know what will happen, or it's something that I already know, or I can like
like you know what will
לחזות
to
predict what is it or what will happen, or if I saw it too many times, it's kind of going there.
Yes. Something predictable in a way.
Or
Okay. You don't have to answer if it's like if you can say like I don't have any thoughts on that. That's totally
No, I always have thoughts about it. Yeah, I think it's a bit more than the amount of times we've seen something. Like it's for sure about how many times we've seen an artifact, but I also think it's about this artifact, whatever it is, not going beyond what our perception of it is. And I think in that way it very much ties to kitsch, where you kind of see something and it's nothing more than what you have seen in the past. And that way we're always like competing with whatever we've seen in the past, because any reference has to be elaborated and cross-referenced.
I think you said something, but most of the time for me, when I see a cliche, it's probably will be something really cheesy or kitschy.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but it's cheesy and kitschy because you see,
yes.
Yeah, because it's nothing more than what it is.
But when it's like even more, when it's like extreme, so it's like extreme. When it's extreme, it's extreme. But I mean, when it's really, really kitschy and really, really cheesy, it's extremely cliche. And
then it's fine? Or?
No. Just saying that like this is for me like something that it's usually I'm like, oh, this is a.
Yeah, because I've heard Coca say that she loves embracing cliche. And like,
yes. This is actually what.
Like you can use it because it's a well-known artifact, which always has a lot of power.
Like familiarity in a way, or.
Yeah, because you kind of already know how it's going to imprint itself on your audience. There's like a wide consensus of what the collective and conscious and unconscious is in relation to whatever that thing is. But then you like have to be clever about it.
Yes, you have to be clever and you have to break it. You don't have to do anything, but
you have to break it.
Like before a cliche becomes a cliche, it's probably something that was very effective, or it has something that was new in that time, and it was really effective, and therefore many people got inspired by it and use it in their own way or use it in the same way, and then it's used over and over again, and then it becomes a cliche. But I think in the core of the cliche there is something very fruitful or interesting that you can work out. It's just through the time, and I don't know, we also tend to be that we want to be innovative, that we want to make something new or want to make something cool or have a different approach on it, and therefore if you have this kind of mindset, therefore probably these kind of people don't like cliches because they are already done so much. But for me it doesn't mean it's something that is lost already or that is over. I think when you go to the core of it, of what is actually the use of it, you might find something. It's also in a way how to open up your mind towards cliches. Like if you just see it as something, how to explain? If you just look at it as a cliche because it's known, everyone knows it, it's done so much, it becomes boring, then you can easily like think, oh no, I don't want to do this because it will make me like a bad artist or something. But yeah, it has different sides, and it can also be really fun to work with cliches. I don't know. I lost it.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's like bacteria. You want it either dead and docile, or you want to know that it's there. But then if it spreads in that way, it's very infectious. Because then you see something and it's fucking everywhere. It's like chairs in dance, or like the color red in cinema.
Like half a sector in England.
Yes, in the fucking yes.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about this concept of the core of the cliche. How do you approach that? Do you understand my question?
Yes.
It's a very open one.
Like etymology wise, like
Yeah, in a way I'm very interested in it because I like to think when there is a cliche, I like to go back to the origins of it in a way and to see it in the spirit of that time and why it was at that time not yet a cliche but something that worked, you know. For example, the first time that chairs are used in a specific way, it was something, whoa, you know. And why was it so interesting back then? It's probably because it was new, or it had another approach to what was before. I think cliches start actually as going against other cliches or finding something new, and then they stay because they were so strong, and then they become cliche again. And I think you have to, when you want to go to the core, you have to go back to where it started and to see it in relation of the history of the time, of the spirit of the people, and not just within dance. Also, how did people live together? Was there any transport? Was there internet? Yes or no, you know? How did people communicate? What was a religion? Like, you can have the whole world around it and then try to understand where these things come from. And this for me is really interesting to see why things in that time
worked.
Or were inspiring for people.
Yeah, maybe it's like positive cores that were misinterpreted. Because I think a lot of cliches become cliches because people see something that works and they can't like quite place their finger on why and how and in which context, and then they use it for like what the fuck ever. And like now in dance, these like sitting on the sides, looking inwards while we're not dancing. When Brecht did it, it was amazing. It was ingenious. It changed theater forever.
When who?
Bertolt Brecht.
Okay, yes.
But now it's complete nonsense. It has no hold. It's not relevant. It's not used in a way that enhances its core. So it's not more than what it was, or enhances what it is used for.
Yeah.
I thought I had a funny thought that it's a bit stupid, but that like what will be the clichés in like 100 like if what we are doing or what is happening now will be a cliche.
Babe, if you're innovative enough, then you're gonna be.
Maybe this is interesting. Like what will be
It
the
can
next?
become a classic.
No, but really, like what will be in the like if now we think that blah 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 is cliche. What will people think in like? Yeah.
Only like 10 years. Or
Yes, maybe like what I don't know if like what people are doing now. Maybe this will be something that it's like cliche. And
Yeah, but it already. I mean, actually,
this
we can see like we see Rosest in that way.
Yes.
yes.
So it's like it's so recent and it's already like dead, buried, came back to life, staked, worked out again.
But this is also interesting, like the difference between something being, you see a lot being normal in a way, and something becoming classic, and something becoming cliched.
Yeah.
Do you have any
It's
thoughts?
a difference. A classic, it survives time. But I must say, with certain classics like paintings, for example, it also really depends on the people who keep it alive. Because if you have curators that think, oh, this Van Gogh, it's so beautiful, it's so great, and they keep it through time, and everyone like thinks, oh yeah, they should know, oh, it's fantastic, it's with his life story, and it passes through time. But actually, if you really look at the picture or the painting, it might not be such a classic. Well, maybe this is something else.
Yeah, but I think
No,
maybe
but it's interesting.
like maybe classics are, which is which? Maybe classics are diachronic and kitsch is synchronic. Like in the sense, maybe it's the other way around. In the sense that classics like have their point in time and they're like a slice, and like you can't fuck with them no more. So like
They were really meaningful for their time.
And they stay, and if they were meaningful enough for their time, then they become source of inspiration and a source of kitsch.
Yeah, because Rosas Dans Rosas, for me it's a classic.
Yeah, it is.
But all the things that came after with the chairs and the this is like, oh yeah, cliche, we've seen it, you know, like
but I feel,
but it doesn't mean that the origin it's not a classic.
but also like this relation to like cliche is like having experienced a lot in the past. I suddenly start to think that, I'm like thinking of classical music, and I'm thinking if I can think of cliches, and I can't because I'm not knowledgeable enough in classical music.
But there
There are for sure.
I can I bet you I can show you some classical music and you'll be like, oh, that's such a cliche. But yes, sorry, I just.
Oh, yeah, but that's also a thing then, because if you look back at something, that also happens in movies. I do know my shit, and in movies that happens a lot. Because I, for example, cannot watch Bergman, just cannot.
Oh really?
Because it's so old, and I realize that this is where most of the things that I enjoy now come from. Well, many of them, but I just cannot see the source. Even though it's a classic, it's like the epitome of the cliche for me. So maybe it does work.
Then the
the other way
cliche
around.
worked out better for you than the origin of it.
Yeah, maybe that might be it.
Yeah.
That the cliche has been improved upon, whereas in watching like the Holy Mountain, nothing tops the Holy Mountain.
But this is actually nice that you take the spirit of the cliche and you take it with you, like
but I
as
think
a
it's been-
foundation. But
I don't think they thought of it as a cliche. It's just been improved so much since like realism has come so far.
yeah, but
That-
then you're also talking about something really general. I think cliches are also focused on specific themes.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be because
No, so let's like what bothers me with Bergman is the cinematography and it's the acting style, and they have both been since fairly elaborated and have expanded massively and are much better. So going back to something, it becomes a kitsch in comparison, although it can be in the eyes of others classic, because if you look at it the other way around, it's also the reason why things now are good.
yeah.
It's like a double-edged sword.
I wonder if it's.
This is interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
This is the reason why things now are good.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
it's like how you use the cliché. It's what we talked about before, then that when people don't understand the source, they just take the surface of it and use it as a trick. Like literally when like, so you think you can dance, it's just often just tricks. And people without knowledge of dance, they think, wow, this is dance, this is so cool, and it's attractive in a moment, but it's just like the surface of it, it doesn't have a ground. So then with things that don't work, they just take the surface, but with things, for example, these movies, they do work because they do understand where the source, what's the meaning of it. They don't just take the image of it, but they
also expanding
understand
upon
it.
it, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just taking something, putting it in another context, just there. It's expanding upon the concept itself.
Yeah, maybe classics are just those things that cannot be like deconstructed. That they're just like more than the techniques that are used. Like again, I'm like the Holy Mountain. You can't break it apart. It's like what works in the Holy Mountain, like nothing, and then like everything. So maybe that might be it as well. That you just can't break it apart. That you can't be more than the sum of the parts of the Holy Mountain.
You've kind of already started on it, but do you have any more examples of what you think of when you of cliches? It can be dance pieces, it can be popular culture, it can be.
Do we draw the line between cliche and kitsch? Because I feel like
let's just use them now because this is feeling natural to use them.
Well, what would you
Similarly.
describe? Because for me, it's not really clear what is the difference between. Like I know there's a difference, but how would you define a difference between?
No, for me they
cliché
also
and
just
kitsch?
work like in the same
As
syntax.
synonyms
Yeah.
in a way.
Okay.
So sorry for cutting you off. So examples.
Yes. Yes.
For me, something it's not really specific, but something that's becoming really cliche is the use of gender in performances. You see it everywhere, and I know it's needed. I know it's some of them are effective, but I feel a lot of people just use it to use it because it's a interesting topic of our times, and it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to change. But then I feel, I don't know why, but it becomes cliche. I don't know if it's about the amount of things I see, or they use cliche images of how to address gender also. And then they say their performance is about gender. Well, they just use the flat images of it. Maybe we're also in a time already that we have to go beyond it. That 5 years ago it worked, but now times are moving faster, so we already need to approach it differently.
This way of approaching or this way of addressing, do you talk about specific images that they kind of use?
Actually, yes. So what I'm talking about is drag queens, women that are positioned more manly, or like show a manly side, and a man who show a feminine side. For me, it's still very dualistic or binary. Yes.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it worked really well because we didn't see this yet so much on stage. It was just a topic that was within the people who lived through this, and it wasn't spread out so much. And I feel now it's slowly it is spreading out. Maybe it's just my environment that everyone is like really open for it, but the world around outside not yet. But then it's really binary images of it, the way how to speak about it, to make jokes about it. While actually for me it's more something really individual, and to place gender in these images, you are replacing it in a box again. And in the beginning it was necessary just to show that it's there and that it's okay, and that
to break that box first.
to break that box first. But now I feel like the people who do it again and again, they just use what happened there, and then they are boxing themselves in. For me this is an example of a cliche that's happening right now.
Nice. Rotem, are you thinking of any cliché?
I just thought that I think if I'll say it, I will come back to the beginning, because I
That's
thought
fine.
that for me, when it's too clear what is happening on stage, or like that I don't have place to think or imagine, and it's like just like it reminds me a piece of last year that like I really saw. I couldn't imagine what is like what doesn't matter what I want, but I couldn't even imagine. But it just like was so clear that
Which one?
I don't know.
Off the record.
Yes. But like it was so clear everything that happened. I could like there was a story and there was no place to think. And it was I think something in a relationship is like something that for me usually
It was Alan's piece. Come on, just say it.
So like everything that happened.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Like that everything that's happening is super super clear and there is no place to imagine, and it's just like maybe when something shows a story, a clear story, for me it's
like the narrative type.
yes, when it's like when it's depends how it's on stage, but if it's really clear and it's a story that you can like understand each moment.
It's almost like pantomime.
Yes,
of,
this is what I mean.
On the stage.
Yeah.
So then actually the cliche, it's the pantomime.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really
Like how you tell a story.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what I meant.
The way to tell a story.
And then what was interesting about this piece was that this person was not aware of the fact that it was so much pantomime. So it used a way that we've seen a lot, or that is really cliche, or not.
And then maybe for him it wasn't this because he came from a different place, a different.
He hadn't seen that type.
So
that
this
maybe.
is interesting also with cliches. So in that fact, it's personal based, or where you come from based. It's not. I don't think cliches are just individual. They are like, otherwise it wouldn't be a cliche. But this one was a really good example of for us so cliche, and for him maybe really innovative.
And maybe for other people in the audience as well.
Yeah.
Actually.
Because dance is in a really weird place, because like on the one hand the information is very very accessible, but on the other it's not very well like sought out. Like people don't consume this information.
What kind of information are you thinking about?
Like theatrical techniques, dance techniques, staging techniques. Most of what makes sense to me, and you've heard this in the past, is theater, because theater is much more structured in the way that there are names for things. And in dance we have this semiotic problem where we can't like name the terms, we can't place them in comparison to each other. And we cannot start like drawing chains. We cannot defer. We cannot figure what's happening. And so we have like a Thomas Edison situation where everybody has invented the light bulb like together. So all
what?
Like Thomas Edison situation. Like so all around the world there are these like girls doing monologues about their body fat, and I'm like, come on, it's everywhere. We can't see it anymore. And it's the same with gender. It's the same with pantomime. It's like just being ill-informed about what's happening, and also just not ill-informed, but like not having the ability to define it well enough as to know what you're avoiding. Because pantomime is a good example, because if a lot of what you consume as a viewer is ballet, and you think to yourself, oh, this is great, as opposed to, oh, this is old, then you think to yourself, oh, let me take these amazing techniques of narrative and bring them to my practice. But if you're us, hopefully, and you view ballet as a past notion and something that has been broken and has come back, and we need to be like Achtung, ballet, then you know, like somebody has written down in like the grand unspoken book of choreography, like watch out, like be careful when you use these things. Markered everything for us. And you're like, what is like experimental? Like what is you know. So it's like a weird in between place
Yes.
where the information is there, but it's just not clear.
But also, in a way, everyone gets very different information just in terms of school, because I bet things that I see will probably, because you have, like, just in this place, I feel like things that I do maybe are seen as cliche, while and also the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the information, because there's no like book of like info that everyone should read through. We're all getting very, very different viewpoints and perspectives.
I think also as a dancer it's even more tricky than, for example, in the art world, the visual art world, because the visual art world, it exists longer and it changes faster. And I'm not sure, but I have like a theory about it, that it's because it's outside of the body. So it's easier to distinct yourself from it, and you make a painting, you put it aside, and then you make something else. But as dancer, we are trained from young on, and our teachers are like, what they taught, it's in our body, we live it, you know. It's if we wouldn't have had these teachers, we maybe even would walk differently, or we would, it's completely in our muscles, in our bones, in our in everything. You grow up with it. So also, even when you want to make something that's doesn't carry clichés, your body has so many memories that your mind is not even aware of.
So like the artistry is habitual, like the artisan nature of dance is like unavoidable.
And it develops so much slower, therefore, because it takes a lifetime to get it in your body, or not maybe a lifetime, but a long time. And the teachers, they go for a long time, they go way back, and they teach a lot of new students that get maybe 80% or 70% of what the teachers have learned. So the teachers come from like 1950, then they teach, then you have 1990, then you have 2010, you know, it drags along. And even in our bodies might be teachings from 100 years ago, we don't know. It's a really different way also.
So in that way, the art form will change slower? Is that
I
what you're
think
thinking?
I think in a way, yes. I think of course we can be aware of it, and the more we are aware, the more we are able to change. But when we speak about clichés in technique or in how to move, not per se in how to choreograph or position it in piece, but how we move, I think it develops slower, yes.
Yes. And I'm sure that also affects choreographic practice.
Yeah,
because
because
that's what you practice every day.
Yeah, because you cannot in 1 week come from 15 years teaching ballet or learning ballet, change yourself into a break dancer. While a painter can, of course, it's also in the body of a painter how you approach the canvas or whatever you're making, but you can choose to make a portrait of I don't know, of still life, and then the next time you throw the paint everywhere. You know, you have but I'm meaning you have two different styles, two different things that don't need so much practice as the dancing body does need.
I think that's really interesting, combined with the fact that dance is something that happens in the now, and not everything is filmed, and not everything is something that you can just see on a page, for example, and like instead of literature, or you can see film. So the art form kind of changes together, because a lot of people can go see that film at different points, whilst in dance people can only see it at certain times, and it exists, a lot of them only exist in that moment. So it's hard to everyone to keep up at the same.
But
So
at the
maybe there's
same
actually
time
more
carries
clichés.
this big history.
Yes.
When you see it in the now, it has a history of 10 years of training.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Maybe it's to an extent like the postmodern special snowflake situation, where like every dancer, many dancers are like, yeah, I want to create, and then they ask their body to throw up, and they think it's gonna like throw up something interesting, but it's just gonna throw up all the food that has been eaten for the past 200 years. You know, like, my movement is going to be incredible, and you just start moving, they're like, no, but your movement is going to be everything that your body has experienced so far. Yeah.
And it's the same with choreography as well, I guess. It's
Yeah, of
what
course.
you've seen before. And so, yeah.
I
But
think
what do you mean by can you explain the snowflake situation of
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
modern world?
no, because it's the misconception that everybody is special as opposed to everybody is equal. They're not the same thing. It's like it's the American problem in general, which enforces postmodernism as you're special as opposed to you're equal, which again are different. But I think like that's where and it might come off as rather awful, but hey, draw the line between dancer and choreographer, because I think choreographer is talking about it. You know, it's like thinking about it. It's like, yo, like how, why, when, where. That's what we're doing right now. But I think many dancers become choreographers and they stay dancers, and that's also something that is currently like hindering our ability to explode, because they don't realize the kitsch. They don't realize what's the other word we were using? Cliche. They don't realize the cliche. They don't realize the history. They don't realize that they're throwing up.
Yeah.
And then they're just kind of leaving it on the floor. They're not trying to like make a giraffe out of it.
I think a lot of people are being, like a lot of dancers, through their bachelors often, are being encouraged to choreograph as well without maybe having a special interest.
But that's what happens here as well.
Yes.
A lot of the way the dancers here are taught what creation is create something that makes you look decent. That's very far, very, very far from choreography. And it's not that they're not able to. I'm sure that many of them, specifically the people here, are. But it's just like being in the mind.
Just what they're used to. Also, they often get very little time when a choreographer is asked like to create a solo, or that they ask the dancers to create something, and then they get like 20 minutes to create 2 minutes of movement, and then what do you do in these 20 minutes? Everyone goes for what is working, what they got applause for before, what they got compliments before. They use what is working on their bodies. They use their tricks, and
it enforces these cliches, and then like oddly enough, many dancers look the same in many pieces, and then many pieces look the same across the same dancers.
All the pieces look the same.
Yeah.
All the pieces fucking look the same. Hot damn.
Yeah.
At this school or in general?
Here.
In this school.
They're all either like
There's a
fighting
few
dragons.
that are. There's a
one
few
that
choreographers.
okay, but
Once in a
And they are, but then when you look at these few choreographers, they are often also way more inspiring, like how they approach, how they see. They are way more focused on the whole piece as something that has to tell rather than just making dance. So they are a bit more, they have their own voice, or they defined more their artistic practice.
All
This
the
is-
tea of that like little aquarium. All the truth.
Spicy.
At the end of the Christmas showing, I'll just blast this.
Oh no!
Susan, I adore you.
There we are. Safe. Sorry, I kind of lost it. Leon. That's fine. That's fine.
Well, at least we're not politically correct.
No.
Audio.
The topic,
Nice.
is the topic still examples? No.
Kind of. We can go back to that. I just
No.
wondered, do you have actually examples that you can think of from this school? Because you're speaking very strongly that there are like typical dances that you see here. So I imagine that's quite clear in your mind as cliches.
Well, yeah, it's about.
I'm not.
I mean, hey, it's also like the situation. Like if you come and you have a few weeks and you work with 20-something people, and you
Yeah,
want
of
to let them
course.
all look decent, then you're working.
And these choreographers,
with
they
decency.
don't come here often, so
Yeah.
they don't know. So.
And I have a feeling they're coming sometimes not because of how they are creating, and more because of how they are teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they
And
also teach at the same time.
Maybe sometimes it's like, okay, so you can create, but usually I think it's something that is better like for the student to learn from them, and then the choreography it's like plus.
Because many of them are great dancers,
Okay.
and
Yes,
this is
that's
a
true.
dance school. You like see these people.
This is my
basically,
feeling
yeah.
usually.
But they goes like, hey, move like me, and the school's like, yeah, move like them. They're great dancers.
Yes.
And also, the dancers here are great. They are really, really good. So, if you are a choreographer that comes in here for 5 weeks and you see them for the first time move, you think, wow, it's amazing. I have to work with this. But this is what every choreographer thinks when they come in here. You know, so actually, of course, you want to use it. And if you're not used to it, then, yeah, I don't know. But I think the students here, they are great movers, but they are also great minds, and they are so creative. They just don't really get a lot of chances within creation to explore this further, and therefore you get the clichés come out. Sometimes yes, sometimes it's a bit different.
They're also very often the easiest solutions.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do here?
Okay, run a second.
But this is how they work with clichés also, like these
We did that
clichés.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be in every piece. Coca's piece is like 5.
And then you use every time, like.
Running in
Yeah.
circle, 2 groups in front of each other,
Oh my
sitting, waiting,
Oh my
standing
God.
to the line,
Oh my god.
standing with the back to the line, then letting 1 or 2 people in, playing with time, dancing together, all 3 others run in, do their thing.
Have you seen the piece?
I have
No,
nothing,
no.
see nothing, so this is like, this is perfect. I'm just describing what I see here often. Yeah, I have not seen anything.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. You're gonna enjoy the Christmas show.
Okay, great. But it's the same in my school. We have completely different clichés
Yeah.
that happen in every piece.
Which are
Yeah, we can
have a lot of
exchange.
legs. We have a lot of legs.
a lot of legs.
A lot of legs.
Really?
And then we have like people speaking over the sound system and people moving to their words. And it's a lot. I'm not gonna. Maybe I shouldn't put that on there.
No, of course you should. We're spilling the tea. We're having a nice.
Oh,
But this is,
Tiny
you get
English
yourself into
talk.
a topic, huh?
yeah. But yeah. Let's move on.
You just submit it as is.
I will write it.
But on the other hand, if you want to investigate this, then you have to be brave enough to also go through the existing clichés where you are living in, because it's really easy to talk about someone else's clichés
Yes.
or somewhere else's clichés, but it's more challenging to go through your own clichés.
And that's what's gonna be interesting, because I want to play with what people see every day as well.
So yeah,
But I
so
want to also
it's
get a
good.
broader view, because I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk to people at the place as well. So I want to like be able to compare.
Yeah.
So this is great.
Yeah.
You also at some point, I'm just gonna jump back a bit, because you were talking about clichés, and he said, "But does that make it fine?" At some point, do you remember? And I was just wondering why you think we avoid it so strongly. Why it's such a, yeah.
Because it's something. You said it, or someone said it.
Yeah, I said a bit, but
Because it's something that a lot of people did, or like it's familiar somehow.
you want to innovate.
So you want to.
So it's the strive for originality in a way.
I think
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't know. I think we have this urge to create things that are refreshing or new, or when you want to become an artist, you have to have something to say. And if you say all the things that have already been said, what does it make you a more interesting artist than what has been before you, of course? So it's either, I don't think we should be afraid of clichés, though. I think we should allow ourselves to work with them, or to move through them, or maybe you do a rehearsal with only clichés, or maybe you make a piece just using clichés, you know, and see what that gives you.
That's very much in fashion now. These like leftover pieces. It happens in Israel a lot, where choreographers are like, here are all like these ideas which I haven't used in the past 20 years. I'm gonna make Maggie Stewart has a piece like this. I'm gonna create a piece that is just like all the leftovers.
But it's not then clichés, it's leftovers.
But what are these leftovers? They're like like random images, just like random kitsch, whatever, what happens. I wanted to build a dinosaur on stage. And so I did.
Interesting. But isn't that more like a collage?
It's a collage of cliches.
But why are leftovers cliches? Maybe there's like
Because I think cliche is about context. Well, kitsch is about context. I think that's where I draw the line. Kitsch is not contextualizing something in a new way. Omer, Merriam-Webster dictionary. Whereas cliche exists outside of context.
Do you think so?
No.
I think in the sense that it's like the core, and then out of context it becomes kitsch. Because that way we can use cliche. I also think in a way maybe we're exhausted of seeing it, so we kind of assume the audience is. That might also be like a driving thing, just like wanting to stay engaging. I mean, it also is like heavily shamed, rightfully so, in my opinion.
Yes, I think you're right. It's very shamed.
It's looked down upon. It's like, oh, this piece is so cliche. And you're like,
Yeah. But it depends on your audience. If you bring it to a small town in Russia somewhere.
I mean, here they're probably just going to say congratulations and carry on with their lives.
Or even no. Saying.
No, for sure they're going to say congratulations. They can't not.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Okay, I feel like we're kind of winding down.
Sorry, you want to turn back on something?
No, not at all, because there's so much meat here. There actually is. Also, beef.
Bread.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I think we've gone through most of. Do you have any like last thoughts or examples
I'm trying to
want to
think
throw in there?
if there are examples where I enjoy kitsch or like cliche. Because I have to admit that in my pieces I often use like pre-existing structures. So for example, like the marriage thing, I looked a lot at like older like drawings from Christian texts of how a marriage scene looks like. And then like, is marriage kitsch?
But when you use a scene of marriage in a piece, it doesn't make it cliche in the dance world. It's just you put it in a different context.
But it might be a cliche in popular culture, like it's an image that we've seen so many times. So it's also a cliche in dance.
Then there is not, like, for me when I saw.
Oh no, because this piece so very consciously takes these things and then like fucks them up.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's also a thing. Like in dance, like taking, that's like the it's like a German word, I don't remember now. Like the cross-genre problem, where like very gradually media entered theater, and then it was a really big thing, and then like you just had to stop doing it because it was everywhere. And then now dance with like anything, kind of just like taking inspirations. It works fairly well often, where you like take something from outside and you put it in the dance world and you recontextualize it that way.
Like what?
Trying to think, like Ohad does this often fairly well, like Ohad Nahavin, where he would take, he's becoming rather tiring to watch, but even, and it's an awful piece, but even the
Which one?
but even final work, even like the running in the corner,
Yeah.
it's not new, but it was very clearly him understanding what it does and how it works and executing it on a very, very, very high level. It wasn't a time clock. Oh, it was somebody running for 60 minutes. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, this is suddenly like re-edited. But maybe it is like an inner dance
Exhaustion
reference.
is also a big cliche.
Yes.
Where
Oh my god, this Carol Tominsky guy. Burning
we had
wings.
pieces in my school where like when we had a little show in front of the school, nothing big, that there was dancers that would run themselves like to death and then run on the stage to have this exhaustion
That's
already
how-
before you step in.
That's how some dancers can do slow work.
Yes.
You see, that's not a cliche to me at all, because I've never
Really?
I've almost
I
never
think it's
seen
great.
houses like that.
What-
It's boring me
Like
so
without
much.
like except like Abramovich type. That's where what I think of exhaustion. You know.
Yeah.
Or like endurance performances.
Yes. Yeah. That's not something I've seen much of.
I think I've seen it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But even I think this. So Karol Tominski, you weren't the thing, but he showed a piece of him called Beep, I think,
Or he just like lashes his body forwards for 30 minutes and going and goes on and on and on. And what he did is that he like wired the seats with subwoofers, so as he continues doing it, the sounds he's making are literally like vibrating. So maybe that is actually a good example of recontextualizing,
Mm-hmm.
because he used something that we've seen everywhere, and he was like, oh, y'all wanted a twist, eh? And in that way, also just elaborating on my own thoughts, in that way, it's what is exciting for me right now about Del To as opposed to Gotovsky, which is what I've been dealing with a lot, which are both like very, very innovative method acting techniques.
What are full names?
Antonin Artaud
Okay.
and
Yeah.
something Gotovsky. Ooh.
Okay.
One is Polish, one is French.
Cool.
And Gotovsky is like very well defined. So if you do Gotovsky, you do Gotovsky, and then you can't quite do Gotovsky because you're not a bunch of like Polish people in the woods practicing theater all day long. You're just not going to be Gotovsky. Elodie was hospitalized in an asylum way before he was able to bring these ideas into full practice and research. And so these are like bigger, vague notions of grandeur that are free to interpret without the danger of like narrowing them down to a cliche. Come full circle. It's rather liberating in that way. I think is what's nice about picking references that are like postmodern, like open, that are haven't been reiterated upon endlessly. Also, apart from cinema, is now a lot about how cinema is affecting the way we act in real life. Kind of how cinema is no longer trying to like create authentic representations of how humans act. There's kind of like this consensus of like how people act in cinema. And so you could put side by side, I think there was like 5 different movies of a guy driving off in a car, meeting somebody, kissing them goodbye and driving on. And it's like the exact same cinematography and the exact same like everything. So like some of these kitschs, some of these whatnots have been like very heavily embraced.
Yes.
In cinema, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
What like this consensus of how this is how people act, you know?
Yes. And also, yeah, it's such a subtle thing that I wouldn't recognize it as a cliche. I think the moment where he drives in the car, like kissing someone goodbye. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I haven't noticed this before it was pointed out to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now, like watching all of a sudden, like watching Lars von Trier movies, or watching like even Del Toro or M. Night Shyamalan, and they're like just doing the weirdest things with the camera. And you're like, oh, now I see. You know, like now everything else looks like dumb.
Wow.
And you see these guys fucking around.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
think-
I need to go.
Yes.
Of course. Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Enjoy your dance. Love it.
Thank you.
What are you working with today?
Anything.
So
Nice.
cliche. She
So
already
cliche.
did this before. Yeah, I think like one last thing that was on my mind was that in general for me it has a lot to do with awareness. When you are aware you are using a cliche, you can make decisions on it. You can either go against it, go with it, put it in a different context, you can embrace it, but then at least you make a choice about it. And I feel when you are aware of it, then you can become, you can take a position towards it. And often people, maybe us also, are not aware of certain cliches we are doing that other people are aware of. But also awareness in the sense of, for example, the movie, we wouldn't see it, but it's also not our field we're working in, and in dance we work every day, so we're more knowledgeable about it. But then our audience might not be.
It's something Jelke was very busy with, talking towards the end of like the NF&D concept writing, that she said Susan just cannot see chairs on stage anymore. She just cannot see the color red, and I'm like, that's great and everything, but I want the color red and I want to use chairs.
I had a red chair in my previous.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow.
Hold your horses.
But as long as you have that, and here's why, and it's also like this like political correctness era that we live in, where like kind of nothing is correct, so you can't avoid everything at all times. You just kind of have to do. But you have to have it. You have to do with the question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also it's strange of Susan to be like, even though she has seen red and chairs a lot, then the next time when there's a red chair, it might be something completely different that's being done with it.
She's just like,
So that's being just like cutting that out still.
Yeah, but this is something you just have to look through a bit. And I mean, also on the other hand, it's also funny that sometimes she has such clear ideas about it, because then she can, I don't know, I don't think she does it on purpose, but on the other hand, if she puts such a clear idea and she's the head of the school, so then it's up to you, like, am I going with the ideas of the head of the school, or am I going with my own ideas? And then if you decide to go with your own ideas, she probably appreciates it anyway, you know, because you take a position.
Good, yeah.
So she will never like cut it off, but she will tell you her taste for sure.
Yes.
But if you have a different taste, then do your own taste.
Okay, good.
And I think, yeah,
good.
But this is what I experienced with her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm gonna use a red chair again.
well, then
So-
watch out, because you might just storm the stage and break it.
Well, maybe this is what I'm planning, you know?
Make it worse. Add like Godzilla sounds when she enters the stage.
Dun dun dun. That's also a cliche. Dun dun dun.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's so
Also-
many cliched sounds.
Or these sounds with the
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I have some video game examples which might not be as effective, but for all of you video gamers listening,
Hey there.
hey.
Should we make a podcast?
Yes,
This-
why not?
I mean, this is basically what this was. That was a podcast question.
Oh god, that's
there's-
a cliche.
There's a thing happening.
Yeah.
There's a thing happening
So
now in video
funny.
games, where like the basic genres are no longer applicable to many of the newer games. And so what happens often is that a new game comes out, and then many games after it become like. And so now a big franchise, very successful. My favorite games are the Souls games: Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne. It doesn't have souls in it, but it's still the same. So many games now are Souls-like. And many reviewers are trying actively to avoid it, but you just can't. Because many games are Souls-like. They take the different things that have made this Souls, whatever, successful.
Yes.
Like
yes.
specific combination of whatever it is, like action, adventure, and RPG. And they just redo it. They just like repaint it.
Yeah.
And all of them are far less successful than the original. I mean, it doesn't work out for you because the original is a classic. It definitely is. It is much, much more than the sum of its parts. It's the original, like Demon Souls is a clunky, ugly old game. Don't hate me for saying that. But it definitely no, it's just but it definitely is a classic. So and so many of the games again take something that is very successful and they don't understand what made it successful. And I think in video games, and that's the reason now I speak with a lot of the dancers and creators in school in terms of mechanics, because that's what video games are. You have to like set the mechanics of the game, graphics and all that, and all the like music and shit. It's great, but like what are the core mechanics? Like how do you interact? And in dance, it's a bit different because you interact in a way that is like unspoken and oftentimes passive, but you still as a creator need to think of what your mechanics are implying. And I think if you work in that way and you realize what the mechanics are and you realize they're like as a core,
Yes.
what do they imply, what sources of kitsch might they draw, then you can navigate things much in a much smoother way and be much more clear with your coherence and direction, and then kind of avoid making arbitrary decisions that cause postmodern kitsch, as what's her name, the feedback girl.
Again.
Or
Mary
Overly states. She's a go American gal writing about feedback techniques.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's cool to
Yeah,
know.
you saw we went like video games dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was smooth.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
You're
really
welcome.
smooth.
Very nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, we're back to the core concept again.
Might be.
Yes. It's
It's
still
really interesting.
yes, it's really interesting, and it's still quite a vague thing in a way. The core of a cliche.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it makes sense in like this, in like the Derrida sense of the word, where you would where this idea that things are not in semiology are not just like two sides of the same coin, but they are like a chain, and that meaning, as he says, is deferred. So it's like postponed. It's not anywhere specific on the chain, so you just can continue going until you might eventually find the tree is a tree.
Yeah.
Like the word tree, but then like tree is nature, nature is wisdom, and wisdom is owl, and owl is, and kind of continue going. So I think kitsch is always like somewhere on this flux, because even a chain it isn't linear, it's like a radial chain. And as you kind of like continue going inwards and inwards, I think most kitsch, which we can I think confidently conclude, has a positive core. But then here we go, some like chemistry up in here. What we get is the electrons. We don't get the neurons and neutrons and positrons.
Bam! Video games, dance, chemistry.
More, all this and more. Catch us next week on our podcast.
I can talk about fossils.
Dance with friends.
Next week.
Yes. If you have any questions about fossils or chemistry, please send them in.
Please
Yes,
send
a
them in.
fossil
You know-
is actually a captured cliche in the origin of
It's
it.
actually the core.
The core of the
You know
cliche.
who's a fossil?
And you
A
can
vouch.
stamp it. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think let's
Thank
finish
you all
there.
for listening.
Thank you
It
for
was a
listening.
pleasure and
Every
enjoy.
Thursday we release a new episode.